Let us see how to do these kinds of animations using intersection observer API in JavaScript. So you can see that these are very popular animations that you see in most of the websites. So let us see how to do this using intersection observer API. So first thing is that you need to create these sections. So you can see that I have got this blue section and then there is a green section over there. And inside that I have got heading and then images. So if you know CSS, then it should be easy to create this kind of layout with heading and image inside the section. Now, at what point we want to trigger this animations is that when that section is at least 50% in the viewport. Okay, so you can see here that in this green section, less than 50% is visible in the viewport, and that's why animation is not getting triggered. It is getting triggered only when 50% of that particular section is visible, like that. So let us see how to do this. What we need to do is that we need to add the callback for this event DOM content loaded. So whenever this particular event will occur, this particular callback function is gonna get executed. And in that callback, what we are doing is we are getting all the sections that we want to animate. Okay. So I have given this animate dash sections. This is the CSS class that I have applied to this blue as well as green section. I'm getting the reference to those elements using document.query selector all. We have got another function over here. I will get back to this function, but before that, let me go to this particular thing. So over here, what we are doing is that we are creating the intersection observer instance. First argument is the callback function that gets invoked when a certain condition is met. So what is that certain condition? So that condition is basically defined using the second argument, which is basically an object with these properties root, root margin, and threshold. So here threshold we are saying 0.5. What it means is that when 50% of the element is visible in the viewport with respect to the root element. So basically here root is refers to the element with respect to which we want to calculate the threshold. When we pass null, it means that the entire viewport will be considered to calculate the threshold value. So here 0.5 means what? That particular section should be visible at least 50%. Threshold can range from 0 to 1. 0.5 means 50% of that element should be visible when this particular callback is gonna get invoked. And this parameter root margin can be used to specify the margin to that particular root element. So root element is null. By default it is null when the calculations are happening with respect to the entire viewport. Now this section elements is basically the reference to those elements that we have got. So we have got two sections, animation sections, and what we are doing is that for each of these sections we are saying observer.observe section. So basically the observer instance that we are creating here, that object, we are calling this observe method, passing that section. So basically what is happening here is that that observer is going to observe these sections, and whenever they are visible 50% in the viewport, what is going to happen? This callback function is going to get executed. Now let us see what that callback function is doing. So in the callback function, it is taking two arguments, entries and observer. So observer is basically this particular instance. Okay, and this entries is basically the reference to the intersections objects. Okay, so whenever this particular element, say section 1, is 50% visible, that particular details will be stored in one object. Okay, and that object will be available in this entries collection. Okay, it's basically the array of object. Entries is basically the array of objects, and that object will contain all the information related to the intersection. So in this instance, what is happening is that when that element is 50% visible, at that point of time, all the intersection related values will be stored in that entry. And then for each entry, we have got another callback function over here where we are checking if the entry dot is intersecting. So if the intersection is happening, if that condition is passed, then what we are doing is that we are doing entry dot target dot class list dot add animation transitions. This target is basically referring to the element that we want to animate, and we are adding this class animation transitions to that particular element. And after that we are calling this unobserved entry dot target. So basically the significance of this particular statement is that observer API is not gonna observe any of the changes that will be happening after user is scrolling the page. The main thing that this code is basically doing is that it is adding this particular class to the element, and as soon as that class is added, what happens is that animations are triggered, okay, via CSS. So by default those sections are invisible, so I'm gonna show you the first section. Opacity is gonna be 0 for that h1, and then visibility is hidden, so that is the initial state. From the hidden, what we want to do is that we want to make that element visible, and that is why we have added this transition CSS property. We are telling that opacity needs to be transition, and what is the duration of that particular transition? It is 3 seconds. Here the settings are applicable to this heading, and same way we can do the settings for the image as well, this image. So again, opacity is 0. We can also set visibility as hidden. If you look at this transition, we have got this opacity and transform, so these two properties will be transitioned. So for the image, we are not only transitioning the opacity, we are also transitioning transform property. So basically transform is telling translate y 50 pixel. What it means is that we are pushing this image down by 50 pixels initially, and when that animations is triggered, image will be pulled up by 50 pixels, and also opacity will be also changed based upon those settings. So in the callback function, if you notice, what we have done is that we have added this class animation transitions to those elements, and when we add that class, what happens is that, so for the h1 heading tag, this one, what is happening is that when this class is applied, animation dash transitions, opacity of that particular element is set to 1 and visibility is set to visible. And for the image, we are setting the opacity to 1, visibility to visible again. So basically that element is transitioned from the invisible to visible, and also in case of the image, that image is getting pushed from bottom to top by 50 pixels. As you can see here, 50 pixels. Initially it is pushed down, and we are setting it to 0 pixel. That means it will come to the original position. And same way the transitions are happening for this other section as well, heading 2. Same concept applies. Only difference over here is that if you notice these images are getting loaded one by one. Okay, so how that is happening? So that is happening because of this property which is called as transition delay. So basically what we are telling here is that the first image transition can happen, but not instantly. It should happen after 300 milliseconds after that animation transitions class is applied. Then second image should be loaded, but not immediately. Again, we are setting the transition delay. So that transition will be triggered after 600 milliseconds after that class is applied. And finally, for the third image, we are saying that transition delay is 900 milliseconds. So, and that is why these images are getting loaded one after the another. That's it. So other concepts remain same. So here also you will see that animation dash transitions dot grid item. So after that class is applied to the parent element, we are making those grid items visible, and also the translate y is 0 pixel. Basically the images will be pushed to the top from bottom. So this is how we can do these animations using intersection observer API in JavaScript. And there are several other libraries, but if you don't want to use any other library, external library, then this is how we can do it using built-in API.